There we go.
Welcome to the users group meeting. I'm Beth Duttlinger at the Lily M. Evans Library. I'm the user group chair. So I'm glad we have like 34 people online who are in this meeting, and we may have more that come and go. So if everybody could review the agenda, I'd like to have somebody motion to adopt the agenda that is presented today.
This is Rebecca from Farmington. I move to approve the agenda.
This is Alyssa from Morton. I will second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say or type aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, motion carried. If you could review the minutes for the previous meeting, we'll need a motion to approve the minutes. Would anyone have a motion?
I'll move. This is Alyssa.
Thanks, Alyssa.
And I will second. This is Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, so we had a motion to approve. All in favor, say or type aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carried. We're on committee notes, database.
You know what? I should probably turn on my screen sharing. Screen 2. There that is. There we go. If nobody has any questions, that's fine. We've got just one kind of announcement for you moving forward, and that is that the RSA Day for 2024 has been scheduled for the 20th of March at 5 points again.
So you can all close your buildings and bring all your staff. It's gonna be a great day.
And we have for the opening session, we rented out the theater, so we can maybe do a little production for you, a little couple of sets, a song and dance, you know, somebody in the spotlight, maybe some costumes and stage makeup.
You
never know.
joke. We're gonna hold you to that.
I'm not sure you'd like what I would come up with, though.
All right, moving on to the Board of Directors report, Alyssa.
The board spent most of its meeting discussing the future of RSA as we move forward in this process. And similarly, how we will have a discussion about committees. We had our own discussion about board composition and structure. We also started talking about fee structure for how to move forward on that as well. That is all I have. We took no action except for approving our minutes. We just talked a lot.
Thank you. Are there any questions that anyone has for Alyssa? All right. Kendall, do you want to introduce the RSA operations manager?
I will. So an email went out to the listserv week ago, 2 weeks ago. Time is a infinite circle. So at some point, an email went out announcing that Anthony Dieter from the Dixon Public Library is going to join RSA as our operations manager on July 5th. Couple of interesting notes before he says a little something. Dixon Public Library would be one of the largest 15 RSA libraries with their service population. And that library is a member of the Rock River Library Consortia, which is a smaller but fully multi-type consortia. So he brings with him some useful experience. Anthony, if you would like to say something, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kendall. I appreciate the introduction. Hello, everybody. Looking forward to getting started in early June. Can't wait to get to know you all and your libraries. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Especially since you're taking time out of your not getting paid to be an RSA yet life to visit with us today.
I've just worked 2 11-hour days, so I'm owed a little bit of space, so it's all okay.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Kendall, did you want to discuss the May board and the upcoming user group elections?
Sure. So there's been a couple of emails go out. I typed up the first one and then scheduled, I think, maybe 6 additional follow-up emails. We're trying something new this time where it's self-nomination. We do not have an election wrangler calling people and bugging them. And as of right now, we have 1 person for the large library seat, 1 person for the medium library seat, 1 person for the at-large basic seat, and 2 people for the users group chair. So there is still space if you would like to run for any of these seats. Just fill out the nomination form, which was in your email on Monday, and will be in your email, I believe, one more time before the 17th of May. Once all of that is done, and we have on the 17th of May, we have our full slate of candidates, then we will run the election online. That'll be the 22nd through the 30th of May. Directors, you get 1 vote each. If you can't vote or don't want to vote, you can appoint someone to vote in your stead. But it's 1 vote per member, not 1 vote per library branch, 1 vote per member. And I will announce the results in June after everyone who was on the election has been contacted and notified as to the outcome of the election. Any questions about that?
Kendall, I see that it is over a holiday. I don't know if you want to extend it just maybe a couple more days after the 30th, because the 29th is a holiday. So
Is it really? Oh, look at that. Yeah, okay, I'll think about maybe running it a little longer. Honestly, how these elections and in fact how we get responses work is we send an email out and then there's a 24 to 48 hour period where people respond and then nothing happens. Once you get beyond 48 hours, that email is effectively dead, which is why sometimes we have to send several reminders, because every time we send one out, we get a 48-hour period of where things happen. So that would mean if I sent one out on the 29th to say that the 30th was the last day, no one would see it until the 30th. So yeah, I'll probably end up extending that a day or 2. Maybe I'll just change it on my calendar to run through the 1st of March.
the 1st of June.
Yeah, June, March. Again, time's an infinite circle.
Yeah. That would be great. I'm on vacation at that time, so I can catch it if you run it through June 1st.
All right.
Excellent. Anything else on elections?
Not
All
for
right.
me.
Erica, are you ready to do your cataloging department update?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. The first thing I thought I'd just check and see if anyone had questions about the cataloging department update in the users group packet. I tried to keep it short. It's just at about 2 pages. I thought I'd just touch on a few highlights. The cataloging team here at RSA did finish their portion of the backlog. We still have about 4,600 requests that the cataloging maintenance center, the CMC, will process for us. In about the first month or so of upgrading brief records to OCLC records, the team has done just over 360, which is great progress. We have come across some items that have been thoroughly covered with labels and book pockets. So if possible, we're asking if you can try to avoid covering ISBN, publication information, title page. I know sometimes it can't be helped depending on the specific item. So the cataloging team's trying to do their best to find the information they need for the OCLC record from sources like Amazon. But if they can't find information from an outside source and the item's thoroughly covered, we may need to leave it on a brief record. So we'll let you know if that happens. There were several new and revised documents that were included in the users packet. Do not use a record when cheat sheet, the procedure when RSA is ready to upgrade your brief item to an OCLC record, and then the overview of the new cataloging process for items without matching records. That one was revised. We have noticed a couple widespread cataloging mistakes and workflows. The perpetual problem of print books attached to ebook records. And then also items are being cataloged sometimes where they have RSA, the AG, ALS, PDC library code instead of the correct library code. We do have staff here on the cataloging team that keep an eye on both of those issues, but if you happen to notice them as you're out in the database, feel free to report them to the help desk. We do have basic workflows, cataloging workshops, and BibLoad workshops through the end of this year scheduled. Those are on L2. And then the last thing that was in the update, the access to OCLC connection browser that's accessed through your internet browser. OCLC's decided to discontinue connection browser April 30th, 2024. Luckily, OCLC connection client that's installed on your computer, and then a newer online cataloging interface called OCLC Record Manager, those are not affected, so those will continue to work. That's all that I have.
Are there any questions for Erica? Moving on. James, are you available to talk about member services?
Yes. Can you everybody hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
Wasn't sure if my mic was down. Yes, I know Sarah's going to be talking here briefly. Kendall, I think you're going to be talking next about the schools. I'm going to be putting some things in. I'll let you talk about that, what I'm going to be doing next Friday and the Friday after. So Sarah, I'm going to have you talk real quick. Let me see if that's.
Before
go
we
ahead.
jump to Sarah, I just had a couple of notes. One of them is from Robert that they are still seeing delivery labeling issues. And so I just put the link in there to the RSA membership page, which has the not official, but still accurate RSA provided list of delivery codes for RSA libraries and the ones that do the community pickup points, what you're supposed to put in those. And then also the link to the official Rails delivery label guidelines. And it's been a various number of different issues that he reports. One of the big one is still that people just need to write clearer. Sometimes ones look like sevens and eights and fives and sixes sometimes look the same. So write a little bit clearer if you can. And then just a quick note on the consulting virtual visit request form. We have made some changes to that form so that you can now choose 3 dates and times when you submit that form. And then the Member Services Department will do their best to choose, you know, your most highly ranked date. But if they can't get to that, they can pretty much usually get to your 2nd or 3rd date that you selected. So if you would like to do something a little more in depth than a, you know, 5 or 10 minute phone call, or you want to just, you know, have a virtual visit or some consulting time with Member Services Department, please fill that form out. All right, now we are on to Sarah.
Okay, the policy, the circulation policy committee got together and created a survey that went out to everybody on updating the proposed retention schedule for expired patron cards. They offered 2 different changes, one that had a shorter amount of time of keeping expired cards in the system, and one that allowed you to delete them that had $50 instead of $25 as being the base number. So the one that had the most votes was the shorter date time. So I believe that went out to everybody. So we're just wanting to have that voted on and approved if possible, so that Member Services can start on our year-long project of deleting old cards.
The one that is on screen now is the proposed policy. I can also show you the current policy. This is the one that is currently in effect from 2013. Both of these documents were in the package. Does anybody have any
Be clear, RSA
questions?
staff is going to go in and delete these cards. The libraries are not.
Well, okay, so the libraries are expected to be doing this. However, a third of our database is currently an expired patron. So the first step of us going through and cleaning up our patron database is to do kind of a bulk delete to get everybody kind of back to a baseline. And we are, if this is approved today, we propose to start that on, I believe, the 15th of May, which would be next Monday. We would run lists, send those lists to each library, let you go through the list and say, oh, please don't delete this person or don't delete this person, right? And then send us the list back, and then we would go through and bulk delete the ones that you had approved. And we just want to do that so that we can A, get the database whittled down a little bit, and B, because some libraries keep up with this and others have not over the years. So a bulk deletion kind of project working one-on-one with each library is the best way to go.
We're also planning on doing some cleanup of like typos and things like that. And we don't want to do a bunch of typos on things that are eventually going to be deleted. So we wanted to do deletions first. Laura, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I have a question regarding just the phrasing. I'm looking at the, what's on the screen right now. Would it help people, would it help future people if some phrasing on the first 3 bullet points were expired public library cards or something like that, to distinguish that some of these rules are for public libraries? Because your bullet point number 4 is just school and academic libraries, and it's understandable that there is a slightly different rule for school and academic libraries. Would that help anything or no?
I think we were trying to keep it as concise and short as possible to not overwhelm anybody. But if everybody would like that change, that's something that we could do.
So in certain cases, this does not jive with the rules that we've been given in the past from records retention. And they're usually the ones that, I don't know, it gets very complicated, but
And we contacted the state library to try to get like a clear answer on records retention and how that works with like digital ones and things that we have, but you have, and we could not get a clear answer from them. So we've been given a kind of couple of different answers and a little bit of a runaround. So I'm not exactly sure.
well, I mean, ultimately, libraries have to, like, whatever the retention schedule they've been given from the state, they have to comply with.
Right.
So that might not jive with this in some cases.
Which is, we understand that. Yeah, we wouldn't ask you to break that.
My understanding is that retention schedule only applies to our paper applications. I guess it's different depending on what documents are in your schedule, but also, I mean, are the retention records police really going to come after us? And I know they're working on legislation to update retentions for libraries to take care of some of these digital issues.
I'd like to point out that Jeanette put a really good point in the chat. And Jeanette, I don't want to speak for you, but she put a really good point in there that you don't always know when a student graduates. And very strictly speaking, a student could simply cease attending the school and not technically graduate.
I mean, I think that's why you would do this like on a library to library basis. So if you were going through and you had a student that was no longer enrolled and hadn't been enrolled in a couple of years, you could delete that. Or if they are a 5-year student, 6-year student, whatever, then you would just know and leave them in there. I think these are more kind of like guidelines and not like hard and fast 2 years must delete. You know, there are exceptions to every rule.
And a lot of times okay, just to also clarify on a couple things. I know a couple of people, whatever gets voted on and gets approved, whether this gets changed a little bit and gets approved, just to clarify, we are not going to just all of a sudden delete without contacting the library. Okay, just so everybody is aware of that. We are not going to, I am not deleting anything without, we are going to run reports and we will contact and send those to libraries before we delete anything. Okay, and then as for schools, okay, our schools, just so everybody knows, they put graduating years in for the students. Okay, so when schools get a hold of me to have them delete the patrons, their students right now, those are for the graduating years. So if they have a student that's expired, we look at their graduating year. So if their graduated year was in 2021 or 2022 and they're expired, then they're gone. If their graduating year is in 2025 and they're expired, well, it's probably they're still there. But if their graduating year was already a couple of years ago, they're gone. Those, you know, because those students are probably gone and things like that. So, you know, if they're still there, that librarian normally would have already changed their graduating year and all those other kind of things. So
Yeah, and again,
that's how most of those schools work. They have the graduating year and things like that in there.
and again, we don't really do anything without approval.
Yes.
We're very good about, here's a report, please, you know, X off who you think should not be deleted, and then everybody that is okayed are the ones who we get rid of. Same thing with weeding projects or, you know, changing location codes for cataloging records. We always send lists back and forth because there are just way too many variables for us to just remove things out of the system without your okay first.
I have a question, and maybe it's just me. Am I the only one that I hate the no later than, because whenever you read that to me, like say if I read the no later than 5 years after expiration date. But if it's got more than $25 in fines, but does that mean at 3 years and 1 day, I could choose to delete them? But you're telling me that I can't do it after 5 years. I feel like it should be like no earlier than 3 years or no earlier than 5 years. I don't know. That has always thrown me every time that I go to do this for my library. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure out the date. So I always wait till like I hit that 3-year mark. And then I'm like, all right, anybody that's been, you know, with fines up to $25 and we've now hit 3 years, I'm like, okay, let's delete all these people. Because it kind of confuses me when it says, you know, no later than. I feel like, well, does that mean that I could just delete them, you know, after I realize they're expired for a year if they have fines? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that confuses. If maybe somebody could kind of clarify that for me.
I have heard from some libraries that it, like, especially the first one, unencumbered and expired, if they have no fines, if it's 1 year, they delete them. So it was kind of put in there to give people a little wiggle room, I think. And that was the original wording that was in the policy.
Yeah, it's not so much the unencumbered ones that I have that with, it's the ones that have the fines up to $25 or then the ones with fines over $25. Because like if I had several patrons who had cards that had stuff on them, but then I had to call the other libraries and ask them, you know, hey, we're now sitting at 6 years, this person has had this on your, you know, from your library, I need you to remove that. But it just seems kind of strange to me.
Well, and then I have one more question. Is there anything in this policy that doesn't allow the library choose to retain them beyond that in excessive situations, if you will?
Say that again, Gina. I didn't understand that.
Is there anything in this policy that's gonna, all right, so we have somebody who has $1,500 in lost items. Like 5 years later, are we gonna take them out of the system with $1,500? And, you know, is there a threshold there where we can say like, no, they get to ride for a while?
My personal view would be that your overachieving patrons should probably be allowed to stay in the system. Here's another issue. We don't know what patrons have been sent to collections. So when we send you those bulk lists, that's something that the member library is going to have to tell us, because that is not something that really gets marked on the patron record in a way that we're pulling and running towards bills and whatnot. All right, that sounds to me like we need to take another whack at this and maybe clarify a couple of things and maybe add an exception or two in there. So I think what we don't want to do is write it so that unexpired library cards can't be deleted until 2 years after the expiration date. We need to clarify it so that it's the typical time when those are deleted is 2 years, you know, at the 2-year expired point, but you can do it before that. And if you didn't get it done at the 2-year point, but it's, you know, 2¼ years, that's okay too. But the target is 2 years versus no later than.
Would it be clearer if you said like within 2 years or within 3 years? Would that be better?
I personally think so, because then that, you know, it says, okay, I can do that, you know, and if I need to call another library, I can say, well, I'm trying to delete this patron, but their book, you know, and because you're asking them to then write that off and stuff. I like that better within.
All right, we'll take another whack at this. This is why we discuss these here, because you guys have good points.
I will say, Kendall, is this going to be discussed at the next CERC committee meeting, which is June 8th? So if anybody wants to attend, possibly.
Yep.
That's
So,
the
yeah.
policy committee, not the big cert committee, just for
Oh,
clarification. And
for
people can
policy,
still
yeah,
come.
sorry, yeah. So is that June 8th then, Sarah? So if anybody has wants to have some input in this?
Yeah, and the more people that come with input, the better, because otherwise
Yes.
Patty and I are kind of winging it, and we would appreciate more input.
Yeah, that's June 8th, from 10 to 11, so.
All right, well, in the meantime, I think we can still start our expired patron cleanup on the 15th of May. Like I said, we will send a list of patrons. We'll use those target dates that were in the proposed policy. But basically all we're doing for those dates is using them to make a list, right? So we're not going to send you people who expired, a month ago. We're gonna start the list of expired patrons that we send you for your approval to remove at the 2-year point for the unencumbered ones, and then the ones that have fines will hit those additional dates in those as well. And again, if there are ones you don't want pulled out of the system for any reason, you just take them off the list and they won't be deleted. Like I said, we have quite a few of these in the system, so any that we can clear up will be good.
And just so you know, we're gonna send these to all libraries. And if you want to clean up your own and get rid of them yourself, so be it. If you want us to do it, we will send it back to us. If you want to do it yourself, you could do it yourself,
All right, we had a couple other notes in there. Did you see the notes, Sarah, from Sharon there and Barbara?
Yeah,
Okay, great. We'll get that for the next meeting. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate that. Just a quick note, this is more directed towards our schools, and they are getting emails and reminder emails with all of these dates, but I wanted to let everybody else know that the last date to place holds for school patrons outside of their school, essentially, but is the 12th of May. We're going to stop pick lists for schools on the 19th of May. All of the default due date for everything to be returned to a school library is the 19th of May. There are some schools that are closing earlier and have earlier dates, and some that are closing later, but these are all the default dates. Delivery for schools, almost all schools, ends on May 26th. A couple of schools are running a little later. And if you put something in delivery for a school and it's after that cutoff date, it'll sit in the bin out here in delivery. So it's okay to do that. It'll sit there until the school is ready to receive it back. And then for schools, RSA does the bulk conversion of new items to standard item types in June. That'll be a very small project. There's not that many in our schools. All right. Where are we at here?
I think we're at number 9, and it's James again.
Yeah, except I'm going to talk because this top one is for me. So one of the things that we have been doing is converting end of month reports to hopefully more usable end of month reports that you don't need a 25-page instruction manual to know if you're subtracting B2 from C3 and A1. The one thing I think that we are missing is a list so that libraries know what they are getting, when they should expect it to come, and what it covers. So we are putting together a list that's going to start with just the end of month reports, but it'll give you the name of the report and the name of the email if those things are different, the date and approximate time that those reports are scheduled to be sent out, and a short description of each report. And once we've got that done and published, then we're going to continue that out to basically cover everything that we send out of the system to all of our libraries. So that would be pick lists, overdues, CERC notifications, anything that's basically an RSA wide scheduled report, we will eventually build into this list. And I think that'll help, especially with people who are, running a small library and they're new to RSA and they don't know what reports are coming and where they're being sent to and what days they come out or things like that. So basically we're going to start with something that we've been playing with. And so we're far more familiar with what is going out on what day. And then we will expand it out to cover as many other reports as go out to everybody. So I think eventually this will be a very helpful listing of reports that are going out to people. And then James, if you would like to cover the next one.
Yep. All right. I am back. So you all, or most of you should have got a report today. Today is the 10th. Should have got a denewing report that was sent out to you today for your the new item types. If they were the hopefully you received those today. I know Doug manually sent those out today. So starting on June 1st, if they're 14 months or older, I am going to be manually setting those back to the old item types, not the old item types, to the regular item types. So if they're in -BK, they're going to go to book. There you go. Thank you, Kendall. Those are what they're going to convert them to. So in -BK and in -BKH will convert to book and on down the line. So when you get those reports, like today, for instance, when you get those, feel free. I mean, a lot of libraries are already converting those. Just so you know, if you don't convert them, they will be converted for you starting on June 1st. It might be, just so you know, when you do get the list, if you see all of a sudden, if you happen to go back to the list and say, hey, we missed a couple, that's because when the list comes out to you on the 10th, clearly, when I do this on the 1st, there's going to be a few stragglers that's not going to catch it. That's why we're a little bit about a month behind. So that's why you'll see a few that won't be caught, but the next month it will be caught. So again, we're hoping you guys are doing it yourself. If you don't do it, we will end up doing it for you. So, and some of the things yourselves, some of them you will do them before anyway. So most of the libraries have a report automatically set up when we did all these earlier. Some of you asked for them after 4 months. Some of them asked for them after 6 months, things like that. So any questions about that? Most of you, I think, I don't remember, I don't have the report in front of me. There's only about 600 or 700 of them on there right now. So there's not a whole bunch of them. So a lot of the libraries have already been cleaning them up. So
apparently I can't make the pointer work, but I did want to point out that the list that we're working with is not the list missing on orders. Yes. We've removed all of those. Yep. Oh, and my Zoom has quit again. This is now the 4th time in the meeting. So if I disappear, that's why.
Yeah, you're even frozen, Kendall. Oh wait, you're moving now. Your video. Yes, and of course that's even, I know it's no on order, lost, missing. I want to even say oh, I just drew a blank. Yeah,
there's a couple other things, but it's built into the reports. So
yes,
they're all the ones that we talked about when we passed this policy.
Yep, the standard ones that normally would not, so yep. So if there's no questions, this will be starting on June 1st. So like I said, most of you would have, if you have any of those that are older than a certain time period, you would have received your report today. So if you're staying on top of it and you didn't receive a report, then that means you didn't have any of those item types that are older. So thank you.
I may or may not be back again.
There you are.
Zoom is very unhappy with me today. It keeps crashing on me. All right. Where are we at here? We looked at this slide already. And so, okay. A couple other things of note. If you go to support.librariesofrsa.org, you will see the new RSA website. We are starting to push all the new content over to that site. So I will give you an idea of what that will look like. All right, so this is the new website. So again, support.librariesofrsa.org, new website. We're going to move data over page by page. So we want you to still continue to go to the old RSA website, because this is where, until the data has been moved over, this is the official site where everything is stored. But you will know we have moved a page when you run into something that looks like this. This is the Director's Essential page. So what we're doing is we're putting a page, just a note that says, hey, this has been moved to the new support site. Here's the link. That'll take you right to where this new information is. And then we put a bunch of blank spaces in, and then here's all the old stuff that was there. We're leaving everything on the old site on the same page that it was hosted at before, because we have so many documents and so many things linked, and people have bookmarks back to the old pages, and we didn't want to break all those bookmarks. So as we're moving information from the old site to the new site over, we will just freeze whatever was on the old site. So if you click on a link and somewhere, anywhere, and it takes you to the old site, and you see this like lighter gray text with a new link at the top, then you'll know, oh, I can go get updated information over here. But if you go to another page where it is not pushed down and it's not light gray, you'll know this is still the most up-to-date and accurate information. So that's how we've decided to cut this over. That way you can use the new site when it is available, and until we get the oodles and oodles of everything moved over, we'll still have access to all the old stuff as well. All right. And one more note. In fact, I was just reading this email about 10 minutes before the meeting. We are updating our BCA server to be our own BCA server. Right now we have what's called a multi-tenant setup, where we share the server with a bunch of other libraries. That cuts down on your cost. It makes upgrading stuff much easier, but it comes with some limitations. And we have gotten to the point where the limitations on the BCA server are just killing us. So we're going to pay a little extra and have the private Blue Cloud Analytics server set up for us. That's going to be happening in the next 2 weeks to a month. There will be a new Blue Cloud Analytics access link on that cutover. However, all of the scheduled reports and all of that other stuff should remain, I'm told, should remain on even after we cut over, and everything should continue to run all your regular scheduled stuff. Now, the nice thing is that we will actually be able to see who's logging in, who's running what report, when they have those reports scheduled, what reports on our BCA server are the most popular, what reports have never been run by anyone. We don't have this information right now. So knowing all of this stuff ourselves will be great. I think we're also going to have the ability to set up our own users and things like that eventually. So we're going to have a lot more capability to actively manage what's going on and kind of spread out those scheduled reports a little bit, so that we don't have, like right now, we have about 200 reports that all run on the same time on the same day, which is probably too many. So we'll be able to see those issues and resolve them on ourselves. So basically what I'm telling you is, if you are a BCA user right now, you will be getting a new link in the mail, and we'll send it out to the listserv, and we'll say, hey, the BCA link on this date is changing from this link to that link. And then that link is also on the RSA website as well. So we'll get those all updated on the day that transition happens. And we'll probably ask you not to run reports on that particular day. just so that when we do the copy over of the old server to the new server, that you don't schedule something that didn't get moved over to the new server. So that is incoming soon. And then a little more of my dog and pony show before we take a break. Everybody clap for Erica, who has been here for 17 years in March, putting up with me for a long, long time. So thank you. We appreciate that. I'm sure you all know this, but Rails changed their domain from .info to .org. It's still Rails Libraries .org now instead of .info, but that also means that all of the RSA email addresses now end in .org instead of .info. If you send an email to a .info account, it will still get to us, but they've all changed to .org, and it has been the bane of our existence because every password that we have is now wrong, and every login that we have is now wrong. So much fun. And one other thing, if you are on any Rails committee that has OMA requirements with the governor's emergency proclamation ending, I believe tomorrow, Open Meetings Act is back in effect, which means we're having a lot more meetings scheduled in the East Peoria office building. Again, just more just so that you guys know that there will be people in and out of the building, and sometimes, you know, we're going to be helping out with those types of things as well. But that does mean that that affects everybody in the state, essentially, that is in an OMA type of situation. Quick membership update. Farmer City has finished cataloging. They are upgrading from Union Listing to Basic Online. So we're currently working with them again just this afternoon on getting them their patron barcode range so they can order those patron barcodes so that we can go out and do patron entry training. Roba Elementary is still on hold due to staffing, essentially. And this would be a good time for us to take a break.
All right, it is 1:48. We're doing 5 minutes.
That'll work.
Okay, so 1:53. See you in 5. All right, I think people are starting to wander back. Kendall, are you back in?
Yes, I was typing an email, sorry. All right. Let me share my screen again. We will see if Zoom wants to crash on me again. All right. There we go. Okay. So, number one, I need to retract my previous statement. Erica has been here for 14 years. She has not had to suffer nearly as long as I thought she had. So apparently I cannot type. But she has been here 14 years, not 17 years, although that's still a long time to be here. So thank you. So before we talk about what we would like to do with all of our groups in RSA, I thought I would just do kind of a brief history of RSA's governance structure and kind of the changes that we've gone through, and point a couple of things out. Pre-1999, RSA was a not-for-profit that had a board and employees and all of that. In 1999, that organization dissolved and merged into Alliance Library System. And from 1991 until April of 2011, the Alliance Library System Board was actually the governing body of RSA. It was pretty much a rubber stamp governing body, but they were, in fact, the ones who had to sign off on everything. And the kind of de facto member-led governing committee was the Planning Committee, which had an advisory role to the RSA Director and Alliance Board. They were responsible for formulating long-range plans, researching technology and policy, reviewing fees and budgets. And again, they were the authoritative body for the membership. I actually found that on a slide from 2007 of the RSA website that spelled out what our governing body was. I was like, oh, that's good, because I couldn't quite remember what exactly their role was back in the day. After the library system merger, one other thing before we get to that. We've had various steering committees from the year 2000 forward, and each of those steering committees was charged with a task or to do some research on something. So we had a steering committee on finding a new ILS. We had a steering committee for RSA independence that started in 2010. We had a couple other steering committees that looked at various issues. And again, that was a committee that would meet and would come up with proposals, and those then would go to the planning committee, but ultimately they would get approved by the Alliance board at an Alliance board meeting. And in that time frame, users group was around. And users group basically talked about updates and member operations and lots of discussion topics. Some of them were very loud back in the day. There was training, discussions of training, those types of things that happened at users group. They were far more interactive than they are now. There was also database and circulation committees that were set up at some point, and those were basically networking, training, and operational discussions. And again, this was all pre-merger. Then at the merger, so starting in 2011, we converted back to a not-for-profit with a board, but again, no staff. So it was kind of a paper board. Users group, which has been granted from the RSA board the ability to approve policies, which the RSA board then just kind of rubber stamps. And then we started off with the database circulation reports and RSA CAT committees. We have added RSA Day and over last couple of years as well to that list of committees. But basically what's happened since the 2005 timeframe when I started, that almost all of these committees have evolved into information sharing committees from RSA to libraries with a little bit of discussion, but not nearly this discussion that there used to be. And none of these groups or committees or anything has been Open Meetings Act. So we weren't worried about trying to meet any kind of, in-person quorums, which is good. So the question is, what do we actually need? We have not really looked at our committee structure since honestly, I started in 2005. We threw in a reports and an RSA CAT committee because we got more reporting stuff and we had a new catalog. So we're like, hey, we should have committees to talk about these things. But we haven't really checked to see if what we're doing is correct and what we really, because of all of the shifting and COVID over the last several years and the rise of being able to hold a meeting over the internet versus that didn't work before, things have shifted. So what we want to know is, what do you need to support your library? Not what do we have. We don't care about what we currently have. What we want to know is, what do you need to support your library? And there's just a couple of ground rules here. All this will be starting on the 1st of July, 2024, because we expect that is the cutover date to the Illinois Intergovernmental Instrumentality for RSA. We've set that as our timeline because we need to then spend the next year finishing the employment of our staff. We'll have new bylaws, new intergovernmental agreements will be signed, all of that to go into effect on the 1st of July. What that basically means is, on the 1st of July, RSA turns into an Open Meetings Act organization, or at least most of the consortia who are intergovernmental instrumentalities believe they are subject to the Open Meetings Act. There are a couple who are using some sort of wiggle room not to, but I'm not sure that's correct. The RSA board is definitely going to be subject to OMA requirements for in-person quorums. All of the board subcommittees will be subject to in-person quorums, and all of the fun that you guys do with your boards trying to meet the OMA stuff. However, if we have an RSA-wide governance group, let's use the current users group. If this group was currently subject to Open Meetings Act requirements, we would have to have 72 libraries in a room to be able to hold the meeting. There aren't even 72 people on Zoom today. So we would not be able to have a meeting, and we would not have had a meeting for a long, long time. So one of the things that we're trying to work around is, how do we restructure RSA so that we don't have to essentially force all of you to close your libraries and come to a meeting. So those are the ground rules. A couple, again, I talked about most of this, but the new RSA Board of Directors is taking on much more responsibility. Those of you who are, I believe, not municipal libraries, so you've got like elected boards that are in charge of your libraries, you will know all of the fun stuff that'll need to be going on, but the board will have admin, budget, policy, and everything else powers. Again, Open Meetings Act. We need to reorganize the membership. We currently have an even number of board members, and I'm the tie-breaking vote, but we can't do that, so we'll have to change the membership. We are also changing RSA's membership structure a little bit when we do a new fee structure. So we're going to look at each position on the board, who should be qualified, who does it make sense to, what type of library or size or whatever to be on that board. And the board will have a bunch of topic-based subcommittees, and that's where a lot of the actual work will happen. And one other thing that we're going to be talking about and have already started talking about is, how do we expand the pool of potential board members? Because I think you all have all seen many emails asking for people to serve on the board, and we haven't gotten that many volunteers. We got 5 volunteers for 4 positions. So we need to be able to get that list to be bigger. And so we're trying to figure out a good way to do that. So the board will be our policy, admin, budget governing body. They have OMA quorum requirements, but it'll be a smaller body, so we'll be able to do that. What we need to talk about is how do we organize everything else to make it work for you? And we've talked about this both in the board and at RSA Day. I had a couple sessions at RSA Day. The board's primary feedback that was not already covered by someone at RSA Day was that users group has essentially morphed into the RSA member update, much like the Rails member update, where there's a lot of information shared with you. There are some discussion topics. We ask some questions, but it's essentially a member update. And then RSA Day, the things that came out of RSA Day was in-person meetings are good. Yet they're scheduled, so you've got time set aside. They're out of the office, so no one can bug you. You get to do lots of networking. And then in-person meetings are bad because we have a small staff and we have to close our library and we don't have a travel budget anymore. So not sure where to go with that. There was an expressed need for a small libraries group so that small libraries can talk with each other about the kind of issues that are specific to running a small library. And again, these don't have to be RSA report, RSA system, RSA staff specific. What we're trying to do is set up groups where we can be helpful, because as you're an RSA library, eventually it comes back to, will the system do this? Does the system not do this? You know, how can we help make your life easier at a system level, or even can we make your life easier at a system level? So, but that doesn't mean that everything that goes on in the meeting needs to be directly related to a specific RSA thing. We probably need some type of school library support group, but how would we do that? What form should we use? Because it's hard to get school libraries out of their libraries, so it's probably more a listserv email group. There was a desire for a middle management group. These are people who have both bosses and work with the public, because there's a specific set of issues there. There was a frontline staff working groups, multiple ones for cataloging, circulation, people doing IT type support, for them to talk together. There was some discussion at RSA Day, and then we talked about it again at the board about, can we use the regional groups not to take over regional group meetings, but use those kind of territories and you know, kind of group dynamics that exist in those, and take the RSA people from those groups and turn them into an RSA specific regional group. Again, rural directors would remain rural directors, but the libraries that are in rural directors, does it make sense to have a networking group just for that area that would focus on RSA issues? We don't know. But that is a way that some other consortia in the state deal with having spread out groups as they do things in regional groups. Again, the listserv email discussion groups don't have to leave your library. It just comes into your email. You can read it and answer it. The ADML listserv used to be super busy, especially when we first started ADML, and people were trying to get their heads around it. And then generally at reports time, it'll get busy again as people ask, how do I get this again? So that was brought up, that maybe RSA could have set up a bunch more listserv discussion groups. Then we had the thought of, well, would some of these groups maybe interface with the board subcommittees, right? So the board subcommittee would meet, the members of the board would, you know, have to have a quorum, but then everybody else could attend those subcommittee meetings as a member of the public. That was brought up. Yeah, so that's, I think I've covered all of that. So those are the things that we have talked about before. and up to now, which are, there's some interesting ideas in there, but we're still not at the core of what do we need to serve you. Go ahead, Beth.
I just have a question about what you mean by groups. I guess I'm confused on that term. Is that just like a listserv group? Is that what you're talking about on that? Or when we had talked before, I was kind of thinking you don't mean it as a committee, you mean it as a group.
Right, yes. And we'll have to find out from the lawyer what the actual legal terms are, right? But when I talk about a group, I'm talking about like users group right now is a governance body. But in the new organization, even if we continue to have a group called users group, in the new governance body, a group would not be a governance body anymore. So it wouldn't be OMA. So I'm kind of using group as a holding term for whatever we end up calling these. Some committee or some organizations call them like support groups, some call them advisory groups, some call them, you know, other terms. I'm just not sure what to write down, and group is a short enough word that I could put it on the slide.
So it's more like a device to get information back and forth. Is that what I'm hearing that it is? The purpose of it?
So as far as the listservs and email discussion groups, yeah. As far as the other groups, like small libraries group, the question then becomes, does a small libraries group want to meet in person? And that's how that group meets, versus maybe they don't want to meet in person and they just want to have an online forum for those types of things. So again, this is all what you guys need and what will work for all of you. Patty's questions, discussion, but not voting. So ultimately the approval for any policies will come out of the board, because again, when you're an intergovernmental instrumentality, if you're voting on a policy and you say the members are all voting, you have to do that in person right now. And that's not something we can do. So there will be, with these groups, the vision is, no matter what groups are set up, there's going to be someone on RSA or the board who is like a liaison for each of the groups, who can take the information back to the board level and or the subcommittee of the board level and say, okay, here's what was discussed. Here's the policy in question. Here are the wording of the policy, and then it would get worked there and either sent back down if it got changed greatly or approved.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say that is the group would have potentially a representative on the board.
If that's what we want to set up, yes. It could be a direct representative of the board, like this board seat is in charge of the middle management group. We'll just use one off this slide, right? And that board member would be a liaison for the middle management group, or it could be that there's an RSA staff member who is the liaison point, or we could just elect someone on any of the groups who would sit in on the board meetings or the subcommittee meetings as a member of the public and say, here's what we discussed at our meeting. We've sent you all the materials. If you got any questions, whatever, right? So there's going to be a liaison function one way or another there. There's going to have to be with all of these, not only with the groups, but with anything that potentially has a question of, can RSA generate a report? Can RSA change a policy? Can RSA do this thing? There's going to be a liaison person on all of these, because we have to know what's going on for those things. We don't, if there's lots of discussion on how to, how do you mark a patron that owes $1,000 in your library versus what we're doing, unless there's a question specific to the system, we'll just listen and not have an opinion. But we still, I think it's kind of RSA's role to help facilitate all these groups, because it does all revolve around ultimately what the system can and can't do.
Thank you. Just to throw out other ideas too, we can think geographically too, and not just small libraries, but other size library, large libraries, middle, you know what I mean? That it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be just one size. So size could be a consideration too.
Yeah, and the ones that were on the previous slide were specifically mentioned by at least one person in RSA Day. So again, we're not trying to recreate the wheel with what we're currently doing. What we want to do is, what do we need to be doing? That's what we're looking at here. Again, what's the purpose of a group? What does that group want to address? What does a group hope to accomplish, right? If we've got a group, but there's no issues or reason for them to exist, why do we have a group, right? So there needs to be something for each group, or each, again, group is the only word I could come up with. Each hive of people getting together, right? There needs to be a purpose and like something. And if the purpose of the group is to network and ask questions of each other, and oh, by the way, those 10 questions resulted in one question for RSA on will the system do something, that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine. We just want to make you all stronger, because that's what we used to do. For those that have been around for 15, 16 years, that's what some of our groups used to do back a long time ago, right? And we've lost that tradition, but it was very helpful, and we're seeing that it would be helpful again. So as we're talking about things, we're trying to think not what are we doing, because this meeting is me talking to you. I don't want to have to talk to you for 2 hours. I want to help.
So it almost sounds like what the purpose of each group would be is kind of representing different aspects. What areas do we think are important to aspects to include on the board for consideration? Is that
It doesn't
it doesn't have to be just Kendall. I mean, anybody. Is that what you guys are thinking too?
And it doesn't have to be, this group will have to be represented on the board, right? So if there's a middle managers group, because it's helpful to have a middle managers group, that group doesn't have to be necessarily represented on the board, but they may have a policy question that they would like, to bring up, or they may have a system level question that would then come to us. So there would be someone who would be liaisoning those out of group kind of discussions. Everything could bubble up to whoever's going to eventually vote on making the change. But they don't have to be run as board subcommittees, and they don't have to have a member of the board running each of the groups. Again, I don't want to put those limits. I don't want to limit what the group is trying to do. What I want to do is find out, what do you guys need? And once we've discussed it here, then we're going to have to do a survey, which is going to be so much fun to write, to send out to all the libraries for everybody who's not at this meeting, to try and suss out what people that don't normally come to our meetings, what they feel like they need, and what would encourage them to come to a meeting. What type of meeting would they want to attend, either in person or on Zoom, or just through a group of emails?
Kendall, with your massive amounts of spare time,
I have lots of
I'm
it.
just gonna throw out there that when you are able to write a survey to ask questions, what you were just describing, I hope that you and your staff will take a bit of time to phone some libraries that do not respond, and see if you can get them to respond over the phone. And I mean, you and I have had conversations about some libraries in RSA just so rarely communicate. Anecdotally, as I'm sure everyone could say, it's rarely because the staff at that library don't care. It's usually because they are stretched very thin. And I'm kind of saying things that we already know, but I want to say them anyway, because they still need to answer that question. The questions that you were just asking, how can RSA help you libraries who, never ask for help because you're stretched so thin? You don't even know what questions to ask.
Yes, that is we call all of you or most of you who are here on this meeting. How many people are here on the meeting right now? 43. We generally call you all the usual suspects because we can count on a core group of people showing up to no matter what meeting we do. There is a core group that shows up to each of those groups, and those people are pretty much in the know. It's everybody else that, we don't know if we're serving them as well as we can. I don't think we are. But we need to figure out how to modify what we're doing, because we have to modify it, right? Well, there's no way we can have users group as an RSA-wide governance organization if we can't get 72 libraries to show up. And I think you all realize that we can't get 72 libraries to show up in one place. So that is, we can't go down that road. So we're specifically looking at ways that we can still get what we need done at this level without being OMA, but we don't know what that is, right? I have some feelings on what I think might help a little bit in a certain area, but that's 10% of the problem, not 90%. So what I'm hoping to get out of today is much like at RSA Day, kind of brainstorming what types of groups and committees might be interesting or helpful, discuss what you need, kind of figure out if we can dream up something to do, right? Or dream up some useful committees. Your input will help with that. And then we can use that data to maybe steer a little bit the survey that we end up sending out to everybody. And we don't have an infinite amount of time to do this because we do have to rewrite the bylaws in the next probably 8 to 10 months at the longest. And so that bylaws rewrite will not, I don't believe it will be required for us to put any of these non-governmental groups into those bylaws. That we might mention that there are some, but they don't necessarily need to be in the bylaws. But, we will need to just have everybody be aware that, we want to, no later than the 1st of July, we would like to start switching over to these new groups. And we can do it sooner if we know what we need.
So Kendall, I'll start off with needs. The Lily M. Evans Library needs from RSA. We need to know what we should be doing. So we need to know policies or procedures, that kind of stuff. We need to know that.
Hold on just a second. I'm going to make a new thing. Users group. Oh, here the atrocious spelling is getting in the way. So, so state that in a way that is applicable as a group or as a unit of people doing something together. So is this like a policy committee? But we need, as a user of RSA, my staff has to know what those policies are and the procedures are. Plus, so we'd also like to have input on what those policies are and procedures are. Oh, like a user policy advisory. Discussing current policies, new policies, changes to policies. Again, all of this would be a group that would have a liaison that went to the subcommittee on the board or the board for final approval. All right. I have that down. Feel free to unmute at any time if you would like, or you can type. By show of yeses in chat, how many people would find it useful to have additional email lists? We won't put a name on any of the email lists, but just an additional place where, oh, I have a question about X, I'll send an email to the list of people who care about X and see what people think, versus having an entire committee built. Yeah, that's the one thing I worry about is the listserv orama from the Rails website, where there's 40 different listservs that you're signed up to. I think the other thing we need to think about is these are not just directors, right? These can be line staff members that could attend things as well, and probably should be in many cases. Gina's question is, if it's an RSA question, should it be directed to the RSA staff help desk? If it's specific to how do I do a thing based on the policy, or will the system do this, or can I set up something to do this, then yes. If it's more of a question of how do you use the system to do Y, that might be something best discussed amongst other people using the system to do Y, because people are very creative. I've seen some very creative ways that the system is being utilized to do things that I personally would have never thought would be the way to do it. And then someone tells me that they're using the system to do this, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I would have never known. So it's a little both, actually. Oh, okay. So Bobby says that the Rails lists are useful, but there's too many Chicago responses. At either the board or RSA Day, I don't remember which. That was a discussion point about how, like, directors listserv is useful for some things, or the technology listserv is useful for some things, but a lot of the times the answers are so Chicago specific that people end up backing up and sending it to the Peoria area or the Quincy area listserv to get local responses. And then that was part of the reason why people were saying maybe RSA could run some listservs that would be specific to RSA libraries.
You've got a good point, Kendall. And of course, I completely echo what Alyssa's put in the chat. A lot of folks, directors or others, do seem to forget that, first of all, Rails does have a regional list, but I like the idea of RSA creating some lists as well. Like just RSA directors or something like that. It's just an idea.
Elizabeth would like searchable groups on a website. Okay. Collaborative is the way. I like collaborative. Maybe we should call, instead of groups, we should call them collaborations. Although then you'll all be collaborating against me, and I'm not sure I like that.
Hey, Kendall, did you see Victoria's response a little bit further up in the chat?
The naming of groups and giving them clear descriptions.
Yes.
Yeah, I copied and pasted that entire comment. And
Excellent.
then the one she put in right below that. And I agree with that. I think we need to do, especially I like the one where it's, you know, based on what you do in the library, maybe these are some groups that might be helpful to you. That I think that's also a good point. Discussion boards. Yeah, RSA at one point in time, I think 2006 maybe, set up some discussion boards, but you had to go to the website to read the discussion board. And so they ended up more with junk things in them rather than useful stuff. So we ended up getting rid of it. I forget which adult entertainment site figured out how to post on our discussion board, but John Whited and I spent basically 20 minutes every morning going through everything that had been posted the previous day to remove all of the inappropriate content, and then walking over to IT to tell them that they may see some things on our browser history that is not indicative of our typical browsing habits. Yeah, Gina, I would assume also that anything that we create is FOIA-able. Although that is something that I think we would need to get clarified. That's what lawyers are for. Oh, thank you, Kathy. That would be great. For the rest of you, when you go to your regional group meetings, if you could, you know, maybe spend 10 minutes before or after the meeting talking about ways that we could reorganize the RSA groups to be more helpful to you, that'd be great. Don't take over the meeting in the meeting unless everybody there is RSA. And I'll tell you, I think I've said this before, but we're very conscious not to go to those regional meetings unless specifically invited, because anytime we go, it ends up being an RSA meeting, and the non-RSA libraries at the regional meetings don't get anything out of that. So we don't want to take those groups over. Got everything so far. Excuse me. All right. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on this topic? Worst case scenario, on the 1st of July, 2024, users group turns into the RSA member update. You'll see at the end of the agenda, I put the meeting dates up to then, and then there's a note about maybe that's the last users group, because it'll be the last users group in May of 2024. Lori, those are exactly the kind of things Monica actually likes to hear, because it helps broaden out her view of what is going on. I had a multi-hour meeting with Monica before I went on vacation, and one of the things that I discussed with her was the fact that, you know, Rails for as much as it tries to not be Chicago centric, it just is Chicago centric. And that's, something that is not just an RSA view, but it's an everybody view. And I she would like to be able to do something about that. So.
I know that Monica is very new in her position, but do you think anything like, staffing the East Peoria office with more folks than just delivery folks or anything like that?
I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. That was one of the things that I mentioned during the meeting was that, hey, you're going to have a bunch of excess office space in East Peoria. When we go staff independent, we'll probably end up keeping, I did discuss with her that, we'll probably end up keeping maybe 2 offices here just because we have to have a physical location for nothing else than someplace to hold the bank depositing stuff. Right. So we'll probably keep a couple of offices here in the building, but we won't keep the rest of the admin space. So, I said, you can hire anybody you want. We'll have probably, 10 desks that you can fill up with people if you'd like. Now, whether or not anything happens with that, I don't know, but that, she is aware.
I have also expressed that to her. And I think it's going to take time and when they have new positions, because it's not like they can say to current staff, oh, by the way, you have to go work on it at East Peoria now. But there's no reason that they can't have one of their continuing education people or member engagement people work out of the East Peoria. It's ridiculous. And I've said that for 5 years, probably.
Yeah. And the expectation moving forward is that people will continue to be remote employees in the state of Illinois. Rails isn't going to hire people in California to do Rails work, but Rails went through a lot of work to rewrite their remote work agreements. And the assumption is that most positions are able to work remotely, which means that they can expand out their hiring pool to areas outside of just, whoever can comfortably drive into Burr Ridge. Having said that, I don't know that they have hired anybody who is outside of the Chicago area lately. I just, outside of delivery, I don't keep up. Right. Anybody else have thoughts on this? In the meantime, we will be continuing to have database meeting committees, CERT committee. I just got the dates for the RSA website committee. There will be, if they haven't already been scheduled, there will be RSA reports committee will be kicking back off and meeting as well. And so we'll be able to use some of those committee meetings as an opportunity to discuss, okay, in the future, what has worked in these meetings and what has not, and how could we make these work better for you? So yeah, we're going to work at this at many different levels. And because these are things that we are not writing into, or at least as I assume these are groups that we are not writing into the bylaws, that means we are free to kind of experiment and play with them and get them to where they serve all of you as best as humanly possible. Who is posting? Somebody posted some item numbers. Do we need to look something up? Oh, they got deleted. Patron confidential server disruptions. Yeah, that is an ongoing concern for anyone who has anything electronic, whether it's at the library level or at our level or hosted remotely. AT&T, the phone company, had, was it AT? I think it was AT&T, had several data breaches just they announced the last couple of weeks. You would think AT&T would know how to run their security. I know just today I found out that the RSA cyber insurance will not be renewed this year, and we're going to have to go out and find someone else to write that. And I've heard from several other consortia directors that theirs are being reworked as well. Basically, I think that's eventually going to affect libraries as well as us. For library members libraries to get cyber insurance to cover your local library, you may have to do things like have two-factor login for email and no shared accounts and all kinds of stuff. So, there may be some less than ideal changes that we need to make in RSA's users moving forward in the future, like no more shared accounts, period, just so that we can meet all of the criteria required to be able to get coverage. But anything that we do there is actually going to help you with your library coverage as well. I too would love to see a modified OMA that allows for a hybrid quorum. So there is in Illinois, there is a carve out's the wrong word, but there's kind of this weird wording in there that if you cover a large space that makes it hard to do a single in-person meeting, that you can have multiple locations that have in-person meetings, and the sum total of everyone attending in those locations would then fill your quorum requirements. Rails does fall under that. It is unclear if RSA as a triple I will fall under that or not. So that is something that is one of the questions that I have asked our attorney. Oh, thanks, Sharon. I didn't see that you had just sent that to me. Too many things on screen. Yeah, so back to Sharon's question about data breaches. It's the world we live in. Stuff's all on the internet. Now, the good news is that Circe Dynix is far more capable of securing data than we are. That's part of the reason why we got out of the hardware and hosting game ourselves, because we are not data security experts here. We are not up on what patches need to be installed on a monthly basis to keep our systems as secure as possibly can be. Circe Dynix is. They spend tons of money on digital security, server security, all of that stuff. And so they put security patches on our servers like monthly. We never did that back when we hosted them. They've got lots of everything they do basically is getting more and more secure, which is part of the reason why I say we may end up with individual user accounts, because they are doing away with shared accounts. It's just a matter of when, not if, that happens. All of the new stuff that's being written, all the web-based client stuff, those are all individual user accounts. So yeah, they're way better at it than they have. Lots of certificates and awards and all that kind of stuff for their security people. They're quite good at it. They occasionally get like denial of service attacks on them, which slows down the catalog or slows down access to workflows, or occasionally will take down one of their data centers. But those are just like basically banging on the door, and then 2 people banging on the door, and then 100 people banging on the door. They're not getting through the door, but there's so many people banging on the door that you can't send anybody out of the house. And so you're stuck in the house until the people stop banging on the door, kind of thing. So there you go. All right. The comments have slowed to a trickle. Which means, Beth, that we can move on to this discussion question, which was my, if we have time question. I keep this on every slide. Every time I will ask this question if we have time. How can we be helpful, or can we be helpful?
This was brought up, I think, a little bit in the last one, is maybe we do need to have like just a discussion about what Cat 4 and 5, what the purposes are, and maybe the best way to utilize those.
Is that item cats or user cats?
Item cats.
Okay.
So like we don't have a DEI user cat 4 or 5. Maybe we need one of those, because that could help us with our collections and looking at what the breakdown of new materials, you know, if we're meeting, I guess things like that, that I'd like to bounce off of other libraries and talk about.
There will be a discussion of item cats 4 and 5 at the next database meeting. We had a suggestion to rename some of our categories, the foreign language categories. So if you attend the meeting, and that'd be a perfect thing to bring up. In the last meeting, Elizabeth from Henry asked a question about when a patron expires, or a patron walks up to the desk. You check a book out to them. Normally they should get a 2-week checkout, but the patron expires 1 week from now. All the items are due on the patron's expiration date, and can that be changed? We did some research into that. I didn't put it on the slides today because I figured if we got super involved with the discussion that yeah, we would not get to it. So unfortunately, this is an RSA wide setting. So to change that, we would have to flip a switch on the server. And basically what that would do is, if I expire tomorrow, but I'm at Peoria where I get a 2-week, I think, checkout, or maybe it's 3, I don't know, whatever, that the items would be due in 2 weeks, even though I expire tomorrow, right?
Oh,
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
that's not what I want. I want CRC to fix it so it asks you, do you want to continue or cancel?
Oh,
That's what I want.
that's development work. That's not flipping a
know.
switch on the server. So that would be much harder for it to happen. No, as of now, no, that is not a possible thing.
You know, I get very frustrated that many of the things it asks you 2 or 3 or 4 times, did you really mean to do this? But that particular one where often you don't mean to do it, it doesn't ask you, it just announces.
It's being very helpful in the wrong way.
Yeah, I didn't really think it was anything you could fix.
We could work around it. That's not a fix, but we could work around it. That is the option there.
I would not actually be in favor of that option overall. I don't think. So, and I know I'm just one small cog, but
Well, and it also causes problems with the patron end too, because if you don't notice that they are expiring tomorrow, they can't renew it because they're expired. So they go online to renew it, and they're like, why now I can't renew it? Why can't I renew it? Right. So there's issues either way there. More item cat 4.5 information for Erica. Thank you. Nick says people call other libraries and ask them to renew a card for extra 2 weeks. Ah, very good. Thank you. Good comment. And okay, so here's a perfect example of things that would be good in a group setting, that it would be interesting for RSA to know y'all are doing this, but we don't really need to know that y'all are doing this, right? But that's that little kind of, you know, we just call them and they renew us for a couple of weeks and then we can check the thing out for them, right? That'd be great in a committee meeting. It's not something RSA really needs to know about, but that helps you guys do your job. And if we can facilitate that, that's what we want to be here for. All right. I'm going to turn it back to our fearless leader.
I don't know about fearless, I'll tell you. So yes, I do want to say, you know, talking about RSA is for things that you can do. You guys are very responsive, and I think that makes it so much easier on us. When we have to contact you or something's come up, is you guys usually get back to us very quickly or on the phone and fix it right then. So that's always much appreciated.
Thank you. We try.
So any other business that needs to be discussed?
I have something. It's very serious.
Okay, Gina.
I just
Go.
want to give out a shout to Rebecca Seaborn at Farmington, who she just got her master's this weekend.
Oh, good for her.
Yay, Rebecca!
Yay.
Thank you, everybody.
You will note on the meeting schedule here that the August meeting is on Wednesday, August 9th at 10 a.m. So we had discussed previously that we were going to do meetings on the second Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. We were just going to go back to a set day, except for the August meetings, because I always have conflicts on these August meetings. And so the second most requested time to have meetings was 10 a.m. And Wednesday at 10 a.m. in August every year, we'll do a 10 a.m. Wednesday meeting. So on a Wednesday. So there you go. But I put it in red there because it is different from what we have. And then when we send out the meeting invites and all of that, we'll make sure to highlight that a little bit stronger just so that people remember, oh, that's right, this is the weird meeting this year. Especially when we're back at the point, although, like I said, in August of 2024, users group technically should not exist anymore. So it might be a member update. It might not be anything. I don't know. That's what we'll figure out before this time.
All right. So Kendall just went over the meeting schedule. Is there anything else? Doesn't sound like it. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. So we're adjourning at 2:52. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.